quantitative data or indicators. And I look back at how we do our tenure evaluation process at EVA, and that is that we have all the information. I know exactly how many papers my people have published when they come up for tenure, right? But I ask them also for two things. One is that they give me 5 of their work products that they feel are the most significant. And second, that they write a narrative statement that tells us, the directorate, the people making decision about tenure, tells us what they think is important about their work and why. And furthermore, why it's important for our institution. And I think that that's the challenge that we as representatives of institutions should take on ourselves for sustainability, that we think about what is important and why, and that we don't go the simple model of ticking boxes. I hate to say it, but it just breaks my heart to see universities ticking boxes. I feel that universities are simply the last place on earth that should go in that direction. That universities should be the place for deliberative discourse, for critical thinking, and for in-depth discussion of content. And I think that we have a great crew of people here to have that kind of discussion, and I look forward to it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Harry. Professor Vielwedder, would you like to respond to that opening statement, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your very valuable points there. I think I agree on a lot of it. I agree that universities are complex organizations, and we need to take that into consideration. And I think your point there is that we cannot reduce complexity too much to one single number or aggregate the information too much is very valid. That's a good point. That point is towards all types of ranking. That is a major point against ranking in general. So I would probably subscribe to a position that we could get, that maybe we should skip all rankings of universities, but that won't happen. Rankings are here to stay whether we like it or not. And if they are here, I think it's important that sustainability is integrated into them. And preferably, I would like to see sustainability integrated into the major university rankings done by THE and QS and the other organizations. But we're not there yet, but I think this is a step in that direction. There are other sustainability assessment tools for universities. There was a review paper published last year in the journal Sustainability. They looked into 19 different tools. THE's impact ranking was not one of them. They looked into 19 different tools and 7 earlier surveys. And it's clear that there are tools around aiming at different aggregation, aiming at capturing complexities. Some of the tools were based on narratives rather than indicators. What's interesting to see from these evaluations of these different tools is that none of them have really captured the attention. None of them have really sort of got any broader acceptance. And also there is clearly room for improvements of them. Most of them focus on sort of the inner, the impacts within the universities, and not so much on the impacts on the society as a whole. So I think there's absolutely room for improvements here. There's room for research into how do we assess complex organizations like universities. How can we find the data, etc. I also think you mentioned the importance of ranking as a way of catching attention, and I think that is important in this context. As I said, integration is a key word. And most of us that are working with integration of sustainable development in universities we know that catching the attention of top-level management is critical. We need support from top-level management in order to get things done, in order to get the integration working. And we know that ranking is something that captures top-level management's attention. Whether we like it or not, it's something that's happening. So if sustainability is integrated into ranking, we know that at least at some places, this will capture top-level management attention. And vice versa, if sustainability is not integrated into ranking, that is a sort of a signal that, well, sustainable development is not really that important when it comes to the really important ranking stuff. It's about publications and etc. So I think it's critical and important that sustainability is integrated into ranking. And this is only the first step, I would say, in this process. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Fjellveden. Professor Herring, would you like to respond to this statement, please?
Yes, thank you. So again, I feel like we probably have more agreement than disagreement. But I think what would be interesting to pursue also with the other participants is sort of what is our ultimate purpose here? And you know, it's true that all of the attention of the high-level management, this is critical. I have a small institution, but I am the high-level management. Yeah, so I don't report to anybody in an operational sense forever, which gives me essentially a lot of freedom. It's great. And when I look at where do I want to put my attention, it really is on content. And maybe this just goes with the size of the institution, that once the institution gets above the size of EWAG, then it's just impossible at a certain point. It's also true that we are blessedly free of being in rankings. And so it's easy to say, don't really care because there isn't one. No? But I think that the university system or the research ecosystem should start to push back a little bit harder. I absolutely agree that if we're going to have rankings, then impact should be part of it. But what I see often is a tendency for people to play games with numbers, to orient themselves too strongly towards what's being counted, and to start forgetting about the content. And when I hear somebody, I hope this is not my own institution, saying, I'm so excited I got a paper in Nature. I'm so excited I got a paper in whatever, Cell, right? I would much rather have them say, I'm so excited about this particular finding, right? The content is what I'm excited about and not the venue for publication. And I feel that the academic culture, we have done this to ourselves in a lot of ways. We have accepted rankings as something easy. It's an easy way to show that we're good, right? So we go along with it. And it's true that it's hard. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to explain content to people who perhaps don't understand all the details of it. But I think that the more that we invest in doing that work, and the more that we are clear that rankings have a lot of issues with them, the better off we'll be. And so to end, even though I'm not completely out of time, I'd like to propose something different, right? If Times Higher Education and other ranking associations are so interested in the well-being and benefit of and the prosperity of the organizations that they're ranking, then I think the best thing that they could do would be to open the gates up. Say, yes, we collect all this data. We as institutions, we provide all this data. Then all that data is made open, and individuals can decide for themselves, depending on what their priorities are, how do they want to put weights on all that data, right? So you could set it up as an interactive thing, and you could say, I care about XYZ, boing, and then ETH Zurich pops up to the top. And then you could say, I care about da, 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 and then boing, Oxford University pops to the top. Well, because people have different values. And what happens with this lack of transparency, with this aggregation process, it's a total mystery, is that you lose control. We are given the control over to these ranking institutions and organizations. And I have to say, for the record, these are for-profit organizations, almost all of them. And their interests are not our interests. And I think we need to keep that very, very much in the front of our minds when we think about whether or not we have to accept rankings. Right? I agree with you, they're not going away anytime soon. But I also think that we need to present these issues as clearly as we can to the people who are depending on those rankings. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to reach out to the public, and I think we have a question from India for you, Professor Herring, and obviously Professor Finlanden, if you'd like to react on that one. I'm going to read this. THE impact ranking should be based on an unbiased third-party certification for which each participation institution should contribute annually to a common fund. Would you be in favor of that?
So I am not sure I 100% understand the question. Is the implication then that THE is not unbiased?
That basically the ranking should be, in order to avoid bias in the ranking, that there should be a common fund for which participation institution, universities should give money to verify the process and transparency of that ranking.
So in some ways I agree with that. I think I would actually go further. I think that all the institutions could throw some money in the pot and all our data in the pot, which is, I have to say, very, very, very valuable. And then it would be up to organizations like THE or QS or whoever they are to design systems that would essentially manipulate these indicators into something, but they would have to say what the basis was. And there should be a system where, depending on what your priorities are, you would see different numbers. I mean, the fact is, every single one of these rankings, and now I'm just talking about the conventional ones, they come up with different values, right? They come up with, you know, one school is number 2 and another school is number 7. And then in another ranking, the one that was number 2 is number 30 and the one that was 7 is number 5. I mean, what does that mean? And when a ranking changes by 10 places in 1 year, then I have to say this means nothing. And I've seen that happen, right? I think we've all seen that happen. So the point is that we should be much more critical of this whole process, and we should push for more transparency. And if it costs money, personally, I would be willing to pay for that. Partly, not all of it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, which links to this question actually, but maybe for Professor Finlanden, I'm going to read it as well. There have been criticism towards academic ranking in that they promote success to the successful and make researchers, institutions wary of creative, risky ways of studying important phenomenon, such as using cross-disciplinary approaches and inviting the wider community in long-term work. How should we avoid a similar risk with this particular ranking, and how should it be best used? Professor Finlanden, maybe?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I agree with the starting point that the criticism against conventional ranking is awarding the already successful. And therefore, I think the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking is an interesting step because it promotes slightly different behaviors. It promotes slightly different aspects, and therefore sort of opening up the scope of what is seen as useful and something that universities should work with. And I very much agree on what you said, Janet, about the criticism on conventional rankings, the lack of transparency, and that we should be more critical. I very much agree. But all this criticism is towards all rankings and not particularly the impact ranking. And I noted that you said that if we're going to have ranking, impact should be a part of that. And that's very much my starting point as well. If we have ranking, impacts and sustainability should be integrated into it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I see a lot of questions on transparency of THE impact. And there's a comment here that the open data approach to ranking suggested by Janet Herring is to some extent adopted by UMultirank, which is the open ranking promoted by the European Commission, allowing any user to define which criteria they wish to emphasize. Unfortunately, the results are not very impressive, and it has received very limited attention. Would you like to react on UMultirank if you know UMultirank? Would you like to react in this open way of constructing its own ranking that, in a way, gets rid of the nature of the ranking? People like to see institutions ranked in a way. Would you like to react on this one?
Well, I have to say that I'm not familiar with that, and I will certainly go and look it up. And this comes back to the attention focusing thing that Professor van Baden brought up also. Rankings are effective. People like rankings, and upper administrators like rankings, most of them. And I have to say, I think this is just part of a continuing discussion that we need to have. We can't change human nature. No?
Thank you very much. Maybe another question for you, Professor Herring. Is it possible to benchmark sustainability? A very broad question here, but should we benchmark ourselves? Are we not bound by the cultural, the geographical context of each institution? What would you respond to that?
Yeah, so that's, I think, also a very interesting question, and it, you know, it comes to this issue of accountability. So one time I was at a lovely dinner with the THE sponsors, and I said something slightly negative about rankings, and of course they bring up this, well, how can you be accountable, right? And then I think, again, it's very much in the context of who's your audience? What are you trying to do? There are some rankings in the US, one of the oldest, the US World and News Report, it's to help kids and parents decide where to go to, the kids should go to college. I mean, there's a very clear reason that started. And I think that at this point, things have morphed a little bit so that the rankings become their own raison d'etre. Right? We rank because we rank. And then they're used in a sort of international competitive sense, just to say we're better than somebody else. But what does that mean? Why are we doing that? And I think if we come back to why, then we'll have a better sense of what we should be doing, including benchmarking.
Thank you very much. A lot of reaction on transparency, and maybe one question for you, Professor Finveden, but how could the universities and how could KTH play a role in bringing more transparency in those rankings? If they're here to stay, basically, what role can universities play in bringing this transparency that is currently lacking?
Again, a good question, and I think it's important that universities and higher education institutions take this responsibility and report on our sustainability performance using different indicators. And actually, the impact ranking is helping in a way in that, because they have a certain set of indicators, and the universities are sort of required to report on those. One of the indicators is there a transparent sustainability report available? So in a way, the transparency is promoted through this ranking, and I think that's an important part of it.
Thank you very much. We're reaching the end of the 20 minutes questions. Does any of you would have any concluding remarks just for a minute, and then we'll move into the result of the survey? Professor Finvender, for instance, if you'd like to start.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think it's been a very interesting and important discussion, and I think that we all can agree on that we need to be much more critical about ranking systems. But we also agree that if we're going to have ranking, impact and sustainability should be a part of that ranking. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Herring, concluding remark?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I enjoyed this discussion very much. I'm looking forward also to the further discussion. And if travel restrictions allow, I'll be actually at KTH in December, and maybe we have a chance to meet in person, because I also think that while the Zoom conferences are great, that a more in-depth and in-person discussion is also very valuable. So thank you.
Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you for this very interesting and inspiring exchange. And we are going to open up the second chapter of our presentation today, which is the results of the survey that we have run among 22 universities. The survey comprised 73 questions, and the 22 universities came from both the ISCN network and the BenchTech network. We organized together with Christina, one working group, 2 sub-working groups, about 100 meetings, and pretty much as much liters of coffee altogether. As you can spot on the slide, there's a big representation of Europe. 14 universities out of the 22, 6 universities from America and Australia, and unfortunately, an underrepresentation of Asia and Africa, 2 universities. And this is especially true when we know that the majority of the universities participating in the 2020 edition came from Asia. We have to add that answering the survey often resulted in intense internal discussions within different opinions within the university. And we should also keep in mind that the sample of universities is small. This being said, we hope that this will give you interesting insights and help you engage in the discussion that will follow. We will obviously present you a selection of the results, but we'll make the full results available through a report at a later stage. We'd like also to thank very much the following persons who have been involved very much in the analysis. So Paul, Jen, Pierre-Anders, Agathe, Maria, and Andreas, thank you very much again. This graph shows you the participation to the THE impact ranking from 2019 first edition to 2020. In 2019, less than half of the participants in the working group participated in this first edition. The second edition, the 2020 ranking, more than half of the universities participated. When we asked the question to the sample of universities, would you be willing in the future to participate in a future edition of the THE impact ranking? 3/4 of the universities said yes, and only 5% said no, with the remaining being neutral. So we really felt when analyzing these results that there was a growing momentum. No matter if we like this ranking or not, participation, people got more and more involved around the discussion of sustainability. And this was especially true when we noticed that all of the universities who participated in the first edition also participated in the second edition. When we asked the universities, so why did you participate? Why did you not participate? The ones who did it mainly for internal reasons, so driving organizational change, develop new indicators, understand their institution better, but also for external motivation like comparison and benchmarking. The ones who did not mainly because it did not meet internal priorities with the available resources. 77% of the university which did not participate did not because of resources reasons, and also because of methodological concern. When we asked the sample of university if the participation of so-called super brands would change the overall participation, and we did purposely not define what was a super brand. Actually, 60% of the universities think that super brands already participate in this ranking. So I'm going to reach to you and ask the first question, the first poll, with the following question. So if we define a super brand as being a top 50 university in the world university ranking, so not the THE impact ranking, really like the global ranking. If we define a super brand as being a top 50, how many of these top 50 do you think participated in the THE impact ranking? So you can see, I can see that people have responded. I'll give 10-15 seconds to briefly share your feeling, and this will bring us to the next point. Okay, so I think the results are being stabilized. You more than a bit less than half of the people think that only 9 of the top 50 universities participated in the Times impact ranking. 32% think that 16 universities participated, and 22% think that 23 universities participated among the top 50 universities. The answer is 9. So the majority of you are right. And this shows us something quite interesting. And I'm going to share some stats. I'm very thankful to our colleagues from HCAST in Hong Kong for the stats that the majority of the institutions actually featured in the Time impact ranking overall tables are ranked outside the top 500 in the world university ranking. So we might reach the conclusion, or actually debate, if what people, since people said that actually Superbrand already participated, if what we call a green Superbrand, sustainable Superbrand, is actually very different to what people call a Superbrand in the general sense, in the sense world university ranking. So thank you for your answers. When it comes to resources and strategy, actually we had obviously a big range of responses, but generally universities estimated between 3 to 6 weeks of work for each institution. And actually we're going to hear one testimonial of a university which has actually spent much more time than those 6 weeks. But this was kind of a broad average. When we asked the universities, so what is your strategies? How do you pick the SDGs for which you're going to submit your data for? Actually, there were like 3 main strategies. The first one being, some universities said, we deliver data to as many SDGs as possible. And the reasons behind that would be to maximize the score, to rank as highly as possible, to rank as broadly as possible, and maybe also the philosophy that all SDGs are important, so that these universities would whatsoever send their data to all the SDGs. The second strategy, which was kind of a European strategy in a way, is what we call the self-improvement. And I'm just going to read a statement that I think summarizes quite well this second strategy. And the statement goes as following: it is not important to achieve a good positioning in the rankings, but rather to identify the opportunities for improvement in order to include them in the institutional priorities. So some universities really have this mindset and cherry pick the SDGs for internal improvement, no matter what the ranking is. And then finally, the third strategy would be what we call the picking selection, which basically is around the availability of data and or universities who would just guess for which SDG they would perform best, and thus going for that SDG. In our sample of universities, it seems that submitting to fewer SDGs actually leads to better results in the overall impact ranking. But if we have a look at the overall number of universities, we could actually see the contrary. So I'm reaching to THE. If you are in the virtual room, it would be very nice if in the Q&A you can infirm or confirm this trend about number of SDGs versus overall rank. Christina?
Yes, thank you so much, Alexander. When we were asking the university, we could also see that 50% of the universities think that the impact ranking can, among other instruments, help to shape the university as a role model for sustainability. Still, the university also highlighted that is a risk on too much focus on the criteria rather than investing time and efforts in activities that will make a real world change. And then we can also see that 50% of the university think that the impact ranking could help to deepen and broaden collaboration with other higher education institutions, accelerating collective action and bringing about a systematic change. In some way, a summary is that we can see when we ask the universities that it is mixed feelings among the universities about the competitive nature of ranking, and some think it is an impetus to act, others that it will undermine the collaboration and the sustainability should not be ranked. And then we take the next slide. And then we also asked the university more from a political view of the pressure they have from different kinds of stakeholders. And more than 50% of the university stakeholders require or request the use of sustainability metrics. And we could also see that only a small proportion think incentive to map should come from ranking agencies. And we also could see that 59% of the universities think that other instruments help to gather the relevant information or the data for the impact ranking. And data that has been already collected can then be reused. So that is a good point. Yes, and then we can take the next slide. And then we also have asked the universities about also how they look at themselves as a green, sustainable university. And more than 70% of the university use or would use their performance in the impact ranking to position themselves as a green, sustainable university. And we can also see that more than 50% of the universities think that the impact ranking can help them to progress towards their internal sustainability agenda. And the universities still think that the most effective way for embedding sustainability in all aspects of the university is the leadership support and the students' pressure and engagement in the sustainability issues, and also the pressure and the engagement from the university staff. So of course, the work starts in some way from inside the university, and it's very important to have the support in the short and the long run, even if we also can see that the impact rankings in some way support and help us in this work.
Okay, so thank you, Christina. Communication of ranking results. So when we ask the universities of our sample, should sustainability be ranked or should it be graded? Good, medium, bad? And there was really like mixed feelings as well. Some, as Christina stated, university think that ranking is against the spirit of the SDGs somehow, but some others think that it would give the motivation for institution to improve. So really like we can see this mixed feeling that was also, we could also feel in the keynote debate. And maybe before actually going into this graph, it's interesting to see that no matter if universities think that methodology could be improved, we should grade or rank, still 75%, 3/4 of them would still use Times Higher Education to position themselves, to brand themselves, if their ranking is good. This was always something that came back as well. To the statement, your university would be willing to share its sustainability data more widely to support broader initiative. And I think this is going to resonate with Professor Herring's speech. Actually, 3/4 of the 22 universities would be willing to share the sustainability data more widely. So this is a big yes. I'm going to run the second poll now and reach out to you and ask the question that we've asked our working group, which is basically, would you be in favor of adding a sustainability indicator in the world university ranking. So we quit the impact ranking and really we focus on this overall world university ranking. And I think Professor Finvanden also mentioned this. So what would you be in favor of that? So I'm just going to leave 15 seconds. It's a big yes. Okay, so a big yes. 84% of you think that we should add a sustainability indicator in the World University Ranking. And actually, this is even more than what we had from our survey, with only 2/3 of the university. We already thought that this was a lot, but actually you even emphasize this further, that there should be a sustainability indicator in the World University Ranking. Last slide, before we go into the conclusion, and maybe this is one of the very important slides as well. To the statement, the evidence being collected for the THE impact ranking measures performance for each SDG in an appropriate manner. Only 18% of the university think that the evidence being collected for the THE impact ranking measures the performance of each SDGs in an appropriate manner. 41% think it does not. And what was funny is actually that 80% of the university who said methodology needed improvement have participated in the ranking. So again, difference between what people think and how people behave, university behave. Improvements, how can THE improve its ranking? So mainly the things that came very often is that by the 2/3 of the universities, that the methodology, so SDG number 17 plus 3 other SDGs, minimum, does not respect the interrelated systemic nature of SDGs. That somehow the indivisible system of the SDGs could be better addressed. The second point was that there was a feeling that institutional context, so the geographical context, the cultural context, was not adequately addressed at present. And I think we're going to hear more in the testimonials about that. Thirdly, it goes back to transparency. The verification process of the evidence submitted is not transparent enough. And then a series of different points. I'm just going to state some of them, but obviously we'll provide you with the full list in the report. But there was a lot of, something that came quite often is that the commitment of students and staff was not properly reflected. There was a need of a clarification on the carbon neutrality, so the CO2 impact of food, transport, business travel. All the efforts of universities for local wildlife people felt it was not properly reflected. Something also that came very strong is that the existence of a policy, so quantitative data, does not necessarily reflect the action. Ethics, too poorly reflected. Innovation, so the patents, the spin-offs that universities are asked to send do not really reflect the impact. So this was a specific mention on SDG number 9. And finally, some indicators are less relevant for Global North. And this was targeted towards SDG number 3 and 5. Okay, Christina.
Yes, thank you so much, Alexander. Then we are coming to the conclusion. And if we look at the participation issues, we can see and we can also understand that today we have mixed feelings about the merits of ranking and numerous reasons for or against participation in this kind of rankings. And we also heard that very well at the keynote debate, that this is the today we have to face. But we can also see that in the future, that institutions, even if it's just was 22 universities, that they are increasingly participating and engaging in these kind of rankings. So we will see in the future what will happening. And I think it's also very special that we have the UN SDGs also to work according to, because the universities are working so very well and do so much, and they map the UN SDGs already to different kinds of activities that the university have. So we have a platform already to work from. And we could also see and discuss what is the driver, who should be the driver for making this happen. And the ranking agencies are seen, of course, as the players, but a majority of the participants think that they should not be the driver. Thank you. And we can also see, and of course we also understand, and we have heard that also before today, that the universities, they have the knowledge and how to use the UN SDGs in the sustainability work. And we can also contribute more on how the UN SDG can be measured and ranked. We can also see concerning the motivation that we agree in some way that the impact ranking can be a tool for promote sustainability work and also strengthen collaboration both internally and externally. And of course, it's also important to see that we have right incentive for making this happen. And we can also see as a conclusion that the consensus that sustainability impetus must come from stakeholders and institutions themselves in form of a context-sensitive, institution-driven sustainability agenda. And then we also have some conclusion concerning the technical point of view that we also had as questions in the survey. And I think that Alexander already have touched about this, but we can see that we have noticed that is different strategies for submitting data, and the impact ranking method opens up for different strategies for submitting data is something that need to be discussed further. And I think also we have good information from the TIES higher education, but that is the way that we have noticed. And I think that is very important to look also deeper on. And then we also have these methodological concerns, also that Alexander touched upon. We need to be better, reflect local context, the SDGs purpose, and actual impact of work, as well as transparency and availability of submission data, and also scoring data. And then I think the very important questions that we already also have talked about is how can we collaborate better, sharing different kinds of data. We could see that 3/4 of the respondents would be willing to share submission data more widely. And this should be addressed to increase return, of course, on investment, also on benefits. So I think this is 3 very important conclusions that we really would like to highlight as a result from the survey. Yes, and that is the conclusions. And as also Alexander described before, we will also put all this information together in a report, and we will also hope to have the possibility to discuss this further with you, the conclusion that we have drawn. Thank you so much. I leave the floor to you, Alexander.
Thank you, Christina. And we're going to open up the 3rd chapter of our presentation, and we are really good with time, Christina, so we've been practicing this in a very efficient manner. Testimonials. So we are going to have testimonials from different parts of the world: Peru, Hong Kong, Australia, Denmark, Mexico, and Germany. The format is the following format. Each of the panelists will give a 4 minutes punchline of their experience, the perspective on how they tackled the THE impact ranking, no matter if they participated in the ranking or they are planning to participate in this ranking. So I'm going to start with Lorenzo Wong. He's Director of Institutional Projects at Científica del Sur in Peru. So Lorenzo, if you'd like to start, you have 4 minutes for your testimonial. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I will share my screen. I don't have the rights to share the screen. Sorry. Okay. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good night to everyone. Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. My name is Lorenzo Wong from Universidad Científica del Sur, a university located in Lima, Peru. I would like to thank for the invitation and for having me in this panel today. In our university, sustainability is one of the key pillars since its foundation in 1998. And different from other campuses, our campus is located in the middle of a protected area in the southern part of Lima. This protected area is called Pantanos de Villa, which is a natural wetland area. So we have to be very careful with the areas surrounding our main campus. So when we heard about the first edition of the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking in 2018, we were sure that we should participate. From our perspective, there was a before and after our participation in the ranking in our university, and I would like to talk more about the after. First of all, the ranking helped us to engage much easier with other universities around the world. For example, we get our first collaboration agreement with an Asian university. Also, we have been able to ensure funding projects like the Chanchamayo project in the Peruvian jungle, with the participation of one American university for the second phase. Additionally, given that we are in the protected area, the participation in the ranking has been a key milestone to secure many projects to protect this protected area, Pantanos de Villa. For example, we have been able to strengthen our Wetlands Guardians program. In Spanish is Guardianes de los Humedales, which seeks to train young universities, students in Lima in the knowledge of coast wetlands, empowering them to carry out research and dissemination related to wetlands. Also, we have been able to expand our social medical services within the surrounding population surrounding our campus. Our campus is located in one of the poorest areas in Lima. So our impact in this case has increased in 200% in terms of people attended from our health services in the campus due to the support of our board. So participating in this ranking gives us a lot of visibility within our board in the university. Finally, from our perspective and given our experience, we think that participating in a ranking like this impact ranking focused on sustainability, not only position our institution as a sustainable leader, but also any organization like us or any other university can strengthen its impact in the society. So we think that it is important to look after the validation of the rankings methodology. This is important for us, but more important is to see the ranking as a tool to increase positive impact in our society. And this is the summary of our experience after we participate in the ranking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorenzo. There was a before and after THE Impact Ranking seen from Peru. I'm going to ask you to unshare your screen, and I'm going to welcome our next panelist, Joy Lam, Head of Sustainability at Hong Kong University.
Great. So hi, everyone. It's evening here, so good evening. So Hong Kong U has been participating in the impact ranking for 2 years. When it was first introduced, I lobbied actually the university leadership to participate, to benchmark Hong Kong U's performance with our peers and to showcase our achievements. The key drivers, as we all know, of university development or resource gathering is ranking. So the University Impact Ranking is actually one of the pioneers to step forward to incorporate sustainability and UN SDGs into rankings, which we believe should deserve some credits. The rankings allow universities to identify key champions in each of the SDG area and learn from each other. It also helped us to restructure some of our approaches towards sustainability. For instance, reshaping the sustainability report that we have. We also think that it strengthens our communications internally between Sustainability Office and other administrative departments and university leadership management to collect sustainability related information across campus. It attracted, in our cases, stakeholders across campus to present the SDG related initiative to us. However, there were views internally that the public are quite confused with a lot of different types of rankings under the Times Higher Education rankings. Also, as Alex has mentioned earlier, the super brands have not been participating in the ranking, combined with the fact that our ranking dropped quite a bit this year. So our management actually do not want to participate next year anymore. So this is the end of my sharing. Thank you, and I look forward to the Q&A and speak more to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy, to share your perspective. Our next panelist is Alistair Dempster, Analytics Manager at Queensland University of Technology. I believe, Alistair, you're not going to share any slides, so if I can ask you, Joy, to unshare your screen, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I'm from the Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane. First up, probably should say that I am working in the ranking space. I'm not a sustainability expert. And I guess what I wanted to share today, because I have a ranking sort of perspective, for any universities that are looking at perhaps participating next year for the first time, just to talk about some of the strategy that we're looking at. As you saw from the survey, most universities are saying it takes 3 to 6 weeks of work for this thing. At QUT, there were 20 staff involved in this. So this is a very time-intense ranking. We participated both years. We submitted all 17 SDGs. And we did that basically because we didn't know at the time which ones we'd perform well in. So we are undergoing a review at the moment. We haven't decided what we will be doing next year just yet. We will continue to participate, but we will probably submit to fewer SDGs. So there are some SDGs we'll continue to contribute to, but there are a couple where we're looking at and we're going, we don't perform particularly well in that, and we don't see any potential for improvement. There are some SDGs that we look at and we can say, we're not performing particularly well in that, but there are opportunities for improvement. There are perhaps some, even some administrative changes we can do. So just a couple of quick examples. I won't try to take too much time, but for example, the SDG 2, Zero Hunger, became 101st out of 101st 200, which was a surprise because that's an area we consider to be a strength. We have a tropical crop centre. We actually have researchers like Professor James Dale, who has actually created entire new strains of food crops, in particular bananas, that are resistant to disease, that have higher nutritional value. So that was one that we thought we were doing particularly well in. if you look at the dashboard provided by Times there, you can see that we have 0 in one of these scores, and that's because we don't have any agricultural graduates. So that means that we're never going to do well in that, no matter how well we do on the other indicators, because we don't have agricultural graduates. When it comes to agriculture, we have very practical research, but we don't teach. So that's one that we'll probably not continue with. So if you're thinking of entering this ranking next year, just make sure that you do have a look in some detail at the indicators. There are hundreds of indicators as opposed to a lot of the other rankings that only will ask for a dozen bits and pieces. And just be aware that your perceived strengths may not necessarily be reflected in the rankings, because there may be some specific indicator within the SDG that you fall down on. Our other one is climate. When you look at our low energy use, we score 1 out of 100 because we're Australia. All Australian universities do poorly on that SDG, except for one, which is Tasmania. Tasmania is our island state, and if you look at Tasmania, it's only been connected to the national grid since 2006. It's a wet and mountainous and sparsely populated island. And so since the 19th century, they've been reliant on hydroelectricity. If you look at their energy mix, they are 96% renewable energy. Queensland is a coal-burning state, and ours is 14%. So I think that's a particularly good example of a university who has a benefit in these rankings because of their geography, where they are, and because of the history of their state. So if you're looking at participating next year, again, take a really good look at the indicators and have a think about, there may be things that will give you an advantage purely because of the local environment that you work in, or may give you a disadvantage because of the local environment you work in. And the other thing is there are some countries where some of these policies around sustainability may be mandated. These countries have an advantage over those that don't. So hopefully that's a couple of examples to give you an idea of where our thinking is at, and will help you in your thinking when you choose to participate. It is a ranking that we fully support. I think it's a great ranking as far as the intent goes. But be careful. Certainly, you will never excel in every SDG, and that's just something you have to deal with. And I should probably leave it there. I've probably gone over time already.
Thank you, Alistair. I think your statement relates also back to the strategy and
yes,
the context as well of each other. So of each institution. Thank you very much, and I think that this will also help people to engage in the following Q&A session. Thank you very much, Alistair. Our next panelist is Christine Rich, who's Senior Executive Officer for Corporate Sustainability at the Denmark Technical University. And Christine, you can share your screen if you'd like.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Alex, for giving me the virtual floor. My name is Christine Ritz, and I work at the Technical University of Denmark, as Alex just said, with responsibility for corporate sustainability. As a technical university, I think it should be of no surprise to you that we see technology as a driver to bring us closer to a more sustainable and inclusive world. Because sustainability is about the social, the economic, and the environmental dimensions of our lives as human beings. And these aspects differ much across the globe and are embedded in structures related to history, to nations' forms of government, to nations' wealth in terms of natural resources and human capital. So the universities has very different preconditions for obtaining a high or low score in the Times Higher Impact ranking, just as Alistair just said also. some metrics will be more relevant for some universities than for other universities in other countries. So now I will share a slide also to illustrate my argument. It comes here. And I think you're able to see, right? Yes. So this figure you can see now comes from a UN report called The Future is Now, and points to the observation that no country today in the world is meeting basic human social needs within the biophysical boundaries of the Earth. If you look at the top left quadrant, would be where these dimensions of sustainability met, but as you see, there are no countries here. Western countries are placed in the top right quadrant, where social welfare in general is high. But if we use Denmark as an example, if every country consumed like we do here in Denmark, we would need 4 planets Earth in terms of natural resources. The global south, here mainly placed in the left, lower left quadrant, has less negative impact on the biophysical resources, but also are struggling with the sustainability dimension in the social and economic aspect. So going back to the times higher impact ranking, there are also metrics that measure, for example, the proportion of first generation students at a university, or the number of anti-poverty programs. And I think this figure illustrates very well that, of course, we will have very different answers to these kind of questions. So what to do with these differing contexts in a global university ranking that aims to be inclusive to all? I think that some of the important questions to ask is if the impact rankings shows what we expect, which purpose does it serve, and how can we use it? For sure, if we use the times higher impact ranking for benchmarking purposes, it is definitely not a level playing field. And I can reveal that from Technical University of Denmark, we are not a fan of rankings for benchmarking purposes. Rankings could be used as a driver for organizational change. And a message from here would be to use the impact ranking as inspiration to discover, discuss, and define the metrics and indicators that are relevant in your specific context, in your university or country. The most interesting would be, as we see it, would be to promote cross-nation, cross-university learning. And rankings are probably not the best framework for doing this, but we're also here to discuss the rankings. So could we have an approach where we put emphasis on universities that year by year progresses on a specific indicator, or even leapfrog on an indicator, and then had a practice where we share and discuss why and how progress is obtained? So to end with, it is not a level playing field, but maybe we could strive for making it a common learning platform. And sustainability, in our view, is not a competition. Ideally, it is about helping each other to progress. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Christine, for a very thought-provocative testimonial. Our next panelist is Veronica Solares, Head of Sustainability at the National University of Mexico.
Yes, thank you very much, Alexander, for the invitation. I will share my screen. Let me do it. Okay. As you say, my name is Verónica Solares. I work at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. And I want to say that we have a very big university. We have more than 300,000 students. And I will share some reflections from UNAM about the times higher education. First of all, I want to say that I totally agree with Professor Janet Herring. We need more data. We need data, that's important, but we need more transparency. At UNAM, we would like to know how the weight is assigned to the indicators, why are some indicators weighted, and why some universities that are reporting only 3 SDGs are better rated than those reporting information for all 17 SDGs, as you mentioned before. I want to take another idea presented by Professor Janet Hurin, because we have different values and different priorities in each university. At my university, not only does not cherish any students' tuition, something which is measurable, but it also provides financial aid to those with economic necessity, which should not be confused with the word scholarship, as it is not the same thing for us. Students do not pay the aid at the end of their studies, and it happens as it happens with some scholarships. Also, for UNAM, financial aid and organizing brigades of thousands of students to provide social services is more important to us than, for example, making available vegan menus in the campus, in the cafeterias, when a large proportion of the UNAM's students prefer to use their scarce budgets to make a lunch at home. Another thing is to finalize the topic about transparency is that actions reported by each university will allow sharing good practices. The ranking considers the context of the university. The education will be clear. Another thing we think can be useful is the alignment with the SDG.
Veronica, if you can hear me, it seems that there is an unstable internet connection. Veronica left, so hopefully she will come back to us, but I think she was at the end of her message. So sorry for this connection problem. Maybe before Veronica, I think, Veronica, are you back?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think you left for some seconds.
Okay, I don't know. I was talking about alignment with SDGs goals. Did you hear that?
Yes, I think we were in the last point of your PPT. So maybe if you'd like to state your last point, once the connection is good enough, and then we can move to the next panelist, if you agree.
Yeah, the last point. My last point was about alignment. And well, if there is an alignment with the SDG goals, each university can evaluate how it is progressing in each SDG, and thus the ranking becomes more useful for universities themselves, and allows more detailed comparison between the universities, but not to be better positioned, but to generate spaces for discussion and feedback between universities that share characteristics or similar strategies. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Veronica. I think the last part was clear enough. Our last panelist, I have the pleasure of welcoming Gerhard Kramer, who's Senior Vice President for Research and Innovation at the Technical University of Munich, together with Eva Hildebrand, who's a ranking expert in the same institution. If you'd like to share your testimonial for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Was yours.
Thank you very much, Alexander, first of all, for inviting us to participate in this global event and to make a short statement. As Alexander mentioned, I'm Vice President for Research and Innovation at the Technical University of Munich, and sustainability activities are part of this office. Sustainability is an essential topic for the future of our university, and although we are rather active already in terms of research activities by individual scientists and engineers, we are only now developing a coordinated effort via the central administration. And my comments will reflect this situation and our evolving views. We are currently aligning, bundling, and organizing our sustainability efforts under the roof of an overall strategic approach. We believe that the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking can support these goals and help us to formulate strategy. For one, the many indicators point out the many different aspects of sustainability and how to make them work. The requested information helps us to understand what documentation exists, what is needed, and what may help. One disadvantage of this, we feel, is that a focus on individual indicators cannot drive an overall strategy, or how different aspects of sustainability are related. That holistic understanding is important for the central administration. Second, when it comes to developing reporting schemes for sustainability, the indicators inspire approaches to cover specific aspects of the Sustainability Development Goal perspective. To summarize my brief statement, we understand the importance of the SDGs specifically as formulating political goals and generating impact. However, we do not believe that they give us a holistic view. Ending on a positive note, though, we see the potential of rankings as helping us to formulate goals and projects, and as giving information that motivates constructive activity within the university by giving insight into best practices. So thank you for your attention. I'll pass the baton to Ms. Hildebrand.
Thank you, Professor Kramer. So now it's up to me to share my insights from a more ranking-oriented perspective on the THE impact ranking. So far, Tom's actively decided not to participate in the THE impact rankings for the following reasons. First of all, this has been said before by many of you, the time and effort needed to gather, organize, and edit the data just for the purpose of the ranking is excessive. And in many cases, it might not be possible to provide all the data necessary. So I would assume for the inaugural participation, I would estimate at least 3 weeks of work, and that is quite a lot for just the ranking. We appreciate THE's efforts to address the complex field of sustainability and create a ranking that is also open for universities that would never have a chance to shine in the more research-oriented world university rankings. However, we believe that the methodology compares apples and oranges, and it finally leads to a rather random league table. I really like what Professor Herring said, that rankings always depend on the methodology, and I think this is even more true for the THE impact rankings. Furthermore, I'm a bit worried that THE business model naturally includes selling the data that they gather from the universities back to the universities. There's nothing wrong with this in the first place, but I've heard that they also plan to sell it to governments and NGOs. So I think every university taking part in the rankings should be aware of this and decide carefully how much they would like to share with THE. So the final question is, how will TUM deal with the THE impact ranking in the future? I believe that the best approach for us is to start the THE impact ranking with 1 or maybe 2 SDGs. As a consequence, we will not appear in the overall ranking league table, but we would gain insights and learnings around the rankings without investing too much time. If this first step proves to be useful for us, we might decide to participate in the overall ranking 1 or maybe 2 years later. So we would start the process slowly. It's the end of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Minek, and thank you to all the panelists for sharing their very different perspectives on this particular ranking. Christina is going to take over and handle the questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander, and thank you all for your testimonials. It was very interesting to hear the different views that you have presented for us. And I think that is very important that we can see what we need to improve and also things that we can use in the future. I have a question here. It's about the SDGs and how we are using them in the ranking. And the question is, what do your panelists think of ranking per SDG performance metric, but not having an overall ranking? I think that is a very interesting question. And I leave the floor to you, who would like to answer that questions. Is there someone that would like to react?
Maybe I can say quickly, I think that's a good idea because it will motivate activities by individual universities in specific areas. And I believe that is necessary in any case. And certainly many things should be possible and not only one.
Okay, thank you so much, Jared. I was also thinking about Eva. You touch on this because this is, of course, about the method that is used within the ranking. What do you think about this as a ranking expert?
I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly. What I think about the whole methodology, or?
No, the question was if you think of a ranking per SDG performance metric,
yes,
but not having an overall ranking. That was the question.
Yeah, okay. I think it's easier to compare universities within the SDG. So to compare universities on innovation activities for SDG 9, for example, or there are SDGs that address more the global south and the global north. So I think it would be easier to be compared within the SDG, and also easier for us to start with just one SDG or maybe 2. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Some other who would like to react on that? Okay, then I also have seen another question. And the question is, what about a following type of ranking evaluation for each SDGs through sharing best practice instead? Report is written by an international evaluation board and for extra incentive, for an example. So I think the one who's written this question is about, can we think of other instruments than ranking to support how we can really measure according to the sustainability goals? And I think some of you already touched that maybe also that we can work in other ways than using ranking. Someone who would like to react on this?
Yes, can you hear me, Christina?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yeah, but again, for us, I think it will come back to what should be the aim or the ambition, and that should not be the measurement in itself, but the learning process. And it does not make sense to compare us externally in terms of what do we learn internally and how can we progress internally. So for us, it would be important to, the first step is to decide what should be the ambition, and for us, the ambition should be to learn from each other. And then find the forum that do best, are most suitable for this task. It could, for example, be the ISCN or some of the bench tech people, the coalition that that made this huge effort of going through the survey, and maybe the group gathered here today are the right forum to address how could we work together for this.
Okay, thank you so much for that also. I think we have some other questions. And the question is, what are your thoughts on this and how the rankings become updated in the future? Because someone thinks that it's important that it should take education and also behavior change into account. And this is something that can be better in the future. And I would like just to hear your opinion about this question that have been raised from the participants.
Maybe I can comment. I think these aspects are to some extent already covered. Education for sustainable development is included among some of the indicators. It could be included more, I think. It's so central and so important that it should be included more, but it is there. Also, behavioral changes, if they happen, that should result in, for example, reduced energy use or reduced waste production or something like that. And that is also included. So to some extent, it is already included, I would say. I saw that Joy was waving. Joy Lam was.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I actually want to respond earlier to Christine's comment. I absolutely agree, and that's exactly what I'm doing with actually a colleague with KTH, that we're calling for an open online platform to share best practices with an internal tool that we can help project manage all these stakeholders or partnerships between universities. So that's one way that I think we can be really collaborative and be able to drive and advance sustainability across higher education sector. And in response to the later question, I believe somebody also said that, and I agree that we should be if we are interested in still measuring our performance, so to speak, I think we should be comparing within ourselves, Hong Kong U this year versus past year, or versus the targets that they have already set. And I think that will eliminate a lot of the differences, the apples and the oranges that we are seeing in the metrics right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very interesting comments and feedback. And I think we also have a question, and this is also about the time and the resources needed for also collecting the data. And we have a question from the participants that, how can we highlight the importance of these rankings to continue the focus on sustainability as people are occupied with economic and health issues? And I think that is also very interesting, because we also need to work with this in our daily activities, and we have so much different focus. So this is also a question that I would like you to react on. And I was thinking about Veronica. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. My connection is more or less unstable.
Okay.
But I can hear you. Well, for us, for our university, a very big one, we were more or less 19 people working in different offices, getting results. And the question of to be focused more in economic things, more in sustainability, I think it's very important how to drive that in a different way. But For UNAM, our focus is not to be whether ranked. Our focus is social impact. We are a public university, so for us, the economic point of view is not our principal topic. No? So that's all.
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica. We have also, yeah, thank you.
Maybe I can comment on that. Is for us, for example, is what a little bit easier. As I told you before, sustainability is one of the pillars of our university. So it was easy for us to concentrate in the sustainability in not in the economic side, no? But in terms of resources and to get all the information and to centralize all the information to the ranking, it has been pretty challenging because we have a lot of areas, a lot of disciplines. So it was really a challenge task to cover all the requirements of the rankings. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. We also have another question here, and I think it's interesting because we are talking a lot about sharing also data and information. And the question is, how do we encourage sharing of information between universities? Not only depending on the ranking, but the ranking is, of course, one good purpose to do that. And what do you think about this question? How can we share information and support each other when we are going to reporting according to the impact ranking?
Well, I want to tell something. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
At UNAM, we develop a web page at the internet with many of the results we take together to the ranking. So we make public. Maybe that's a first step. This web page is can be it's in construction, but it's public. So maybe one first step is that, and this kind of groups can let us to share our concerns, and in the measure that we can put all the information to all the public, we can start that issue.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I'm very happy that I can hear you still. It works. Someone else who have some comment on this? I was thinking about Gerard Kramer. Do you have some comments about this concerning the data and open data?
Well, I think the rankings, my first reaction would be the rankings themselves. I think it was mentioned, the word transparency was mentioned a couple of times. This is, I think, one way of doing this. In some sense, I think we're, especially on the topic of sustainability, we are all more or less aligned, I think. So I think there is an interest to support such activities everywhere in the world and try to support. As a comment on the rankings, I mean, one positive role the rankings do play is to motivate university presidents and leaders to be active in this area. So I think although there are these negative aspects that always play a role, I think keeping in mind the larger goal of making things better, as long as we focus on that more than on just the competition, but of course competition drives the activity. So transparency, I suppose, would be my direct answer to the question.
Thank you so much for your answer. I have also a question that we could see in the survey, is that we asked also how the sustainability work have been organized in our institutions. And we could see that a lot of universities have a sustainability office. The work is in some way centralized. And then also we have organizations or institutions that have a more decentralized way of organize the work. So for me, I would like to open the questions. If you have some thoughts about how these influence the sustainability work, and also, of course, connected to the collection, when you need to collect the data to the impact ranking. And I think I would like to start to ask Alistair. Do you have some thoughts about this?
Sorry, I missed the last bit of what you said.
Yeah, I would like to hear your opinion. It was about, of course, how you organize the sustainability efforts at the university, and especially when you're collecting the data. Do you think that is important than if it's decentralized or if you have centralized it?
I'm probably not the best person to ask on this one, sorry, because I'm not in the sustainability area. And unfortunately, I wasn't involved directly with the collection of the data either last year. I do know that our sustainability efforts are fairly dispersed across QUT. And certainly to collect this data did involve about 20 different people across a variety of various places across the institution. So as far as the rankings go, we'd obviously prefer a more centralised model because it'd be a lot easier to collate this data. But I really, yeah, unfortunately, I don't have much more intelligence than that, sorry.
But thank you so much, Alistair, because it's also interesting to see that it's a lot of course, different kinds of people involved in this work.
Yeah, like there was a lot of the work with this ranking was the actual coordination. So the coordination of this variety of different units was probably the biggest challenge for this ranking. You know, a ranking like the World University Rankings will normally involve 2 or 3 people because they are asking for small sets of data that are normally held in our data warehouse. But because we were asking for evidence, we had to consult with every single faculty and every single division across the university, as well as our sustainability people and I think possibly our finance people as well. So yeah, I mean, certainly this ranking is extremely challenging from the point of trying to collect the data.
Thank you so much.
I have a comment on that also. Yes. Yeah, from Technical University of Denmark. I think one of the most important point, if you do participate in the ranking or not, when it comes to the work with integrating sustainability in a university, we have seen it as a huge organizational dialogue or a big change management process, where one of the most important things is to ensure that we think across silos, that we think cross-disciplinary, both in terms of the university core task when it comes to research, education, innovation, and scientific advice. But that also goes when we talk about business integrity or walk the talk. We have to ensure that there are links and connections between facility management, human resources, procurement. So everything we do, it has to be the cross-disciplinary view into it. And I think that's one of the most important tasks that's a central organization about sustainability has, is to ensure these linkages in the organization and to facilitate them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christine. Of course, I also recognize this when we are working with the impact ranking, and we also collect the data at KTH. And of course, it's much more different kinds of areas that you need to collect data than you have done before. And you need to involve a lot of people. But in the same way, I think it is a very interesting process when you are collecting the data, because you also will have some focus on these issues, and people that not are used to contribute to this sustainability work also have the possibility to reflect, and we can together also have good discussions what kind of data that we already have and what we maybe should also start to look at. So this is a very interesting question, of course, how you organize the work in your universities, and also that you find new ways, I think, for collaboration. I think we need to stop here because we have around 10 minutes left and we will wrap up. And I will thank you so much for your testimonials, because that is what we really would like to hear. It's the practical way of working and see how you can use the impact ranking for your sustainability efforts. Thank you so much, and for these different kinds of views. We have learned a lot. Yes, and then it's also, of course, to discuss the next step. We have learned a lot today. We have a lot of good examples, and I, of course, would like to thank you all for your contributions and the different way of looking at rankings. And of course, we could also see when we did the survey that the universities use a lot of different kinds of instruments, and that the impact ranking is one instrument for making things happen concerning the sustainability efforts and support that. And I think we always will have different views on these issues, but we together as a sector also need to really work with this transformation together. And I think what Isa giving me today is also that we need to work with different kinds of universities and different kinds of countries. We need to understand more about the culture and the geographical context. That is very important for a network like ISCN, that it goes international. So of course we need to discuss this in the ISCN networks, how we would like to move on with the next step. But I think it's a good start that the network that we will invite universities and also the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking and other networks to think about, as a first step that I could hear also, is how we in some way tries to measure according UN sustainability goals. But because I can see also in the survey, even if it's not was so many universities, 22, that most of the universities, of course, already are using the SDGs in different ways, both internally and externally. And it is a very important tool for communicate the sustainability efforts. So maybe we can start to discuss what I have also heard today, how we really would like to see how we measure according to the sustainability goals. And then also, of course, ranking is a tool for develop these processes and how we can have the possibility to improve them, and also that the universities in some way should be the driver. And all these different kinds of instruments will help us, I think, to push this important work forward. Concerning the climate issues, we don't have so much time, and I think it's very important that we can work together in different areas. So when I discussed this also together with Alexander, we looked at the survey, we could see different areas. So here we have, you can take the other slides, thank you, back. Some areas that we all have touched today, and we can hear that it's a very important issue that we can share data, and I think also how we really would like to measure the impact that the university have if we are also taking part of the ranking. And then we also have highlighted the methods that is used, and that is also something that really universities can contribute and to have a better understanding about. But of course, this is something that the ISCN network, we have a lot of different things that we are working with, and we need to take it back and also see how we can move this further on. So I think everything, for me in some way, is how we can then collaborate. And we have the goals 17, partnerships for the goals, and maybe we need to think in another way how we would like to collaborate in the future. And that, of course, we have different rules, but still we have the same goals that we want to have a sustainable future, of course. And the next slide. Thank you. We have a question to you that we would like to end with. And the question is, do you think that Times Higher Education can become a catalysator towards more, I don't see, but you have seen the question there. Do you think that Times Higher Education impact ranking is or can become a catalysator towards more sustainability in the universities? Because that was the question of this event. And then we also would like to ask you in the end what you think after the discussions we have had today. Yes or no? Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your answer. And I think this is very interesting. 70% think that this could be a catalysator. Yes. And then we have also 24% says no's. So I thank you for your answers. And I think this is something that we would like to dig deeper. What is behind the yes and no. And we will really like to collaborate with you concerning these issues. And then we can take the next slide. I, of course, would like to thank you all for your participation today, that you have also give so much to us to understand this better. And I think it will come in the future that we discuss this further on. And this is a picture to the left of my grandchildren, Evelyn, Alexander, and Carl Albert. And then, Alexander, you have your son here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you need to tell his name because I'm not...
His name is Sina.
Sina, yes, Sina. And they also would like to thank you for that you are thinking about their future and how we can help them to have these important issues also coming on. So I also would like to thank we have the co-executive director for ISCN, and that is Sylvia Hostetter. And you have supported us through the whole way with the working group and also to communicate this event. And I also would like to thank Alfredo Kagi. He's the one who is the conference coordinator for this event. And we know how important this is. So thank you so much, both of you, for helping us to make this happen. And would you like to add something, Alexander, before we close?
I just would like to join you in thanking everybody. There's been a great technical team, analytical team, and I think the quality of the guests today and the discussion was great. And it also mirrors the fact that together we can have sustainability managers talking to ranking experts, talking to vice presidents. And this topic actually brings a lot of people from different backgrounds talking to each other. So thank you very much for your participation. And we hope to hear from you very soon. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you.
There's one more point, I'm sorry, that I would like to remind people to fill out the survey, the feedback survey that will pop up once you will quit this event. Thank you very much in advance.
Thank you.